Hello, good evening, everyone. So we have the pleasure to have with us Dr. Rashid Mustafa, and it's a great honor for us to say that Sir Mustafa got his FRCS Section 2 cleared in May 25. And he has not only cleared this exam, he has got the highest marks in this Section 2 exam, and he has got the gold medal for this year. And it's a great pleasure for us, Dr. Mustafa, to have with this experience, which is very important. I think we have
Hmm.
in this trying to meet people and interact with them, trying to find out what has been their strategy. I think people are just waiting for you so that they can get the at least near to your marks. For the audience, I would like to say that Mustafa has got around 728, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
728. And what's percentage that stands for?
So that'd be 95%.
95%. And I think that's one of the highest percentages ever scored in the Section 2 exam. And it's a great pleasure for us to have you. So, Mustafa, it's all over to you. What would you like to say for this?
Um, I would say so. The main thing is that I wasn't even thinking that I'd be in any sort of runner up to get a gold medal. I think the main thing about going into this exam is realizing that everyone will revise differently and everyone will have different strengths about how they'll revise. Everyone will talk to you about the books. You know, there's the Oxford Handbook. Everyone talks about um, everyone knows about the FRCS, the FRCS preparation for the waiver book, the pink book that everyone knows about as well. There's plenty of literature online just from cursory Google searches, and everyone's got a different way to
So,
revise.
yeah,
So
so
find something that works for you.
sorry for interrupting. Could you just start with your brief introduction about yourself and then we'll move on to the exam strategy?
Yeah, of course. So I'm an SD6 in Wales. I'm currently working in the Royal Gwent Hospital. About to start my SD7 year in Swansea. Um, yeah, that's me.
And I would like to highlight again what you said just now is Mustafa did not have a very logical study material. Like he has the same study material that all of us do. It's only the strategies
Hmm.
matter which he's going to share with us. That's why we have with him. So Mustafa, it's all up to you. I would like to enlighten all the candidates who are appearing for this exam.
Yeah. So the strategy in terms of everyone sort of revises the same for part one. I find
Yeah.
there's no real teamwork aspect. You have to find a way that you're able to get the information in, retain it, and regurgitate it for the exam. And the main thing for part one is that there's loads of question banks. So you'll all sit part one the same. I don't think there's a huge strategy
Right.
about part one. You just need to pass it. You just need to succeed. But everyone's got a slightly different approach about part two. And I feel that my attitude was slightly different to my colleagues. Um, Everyone will say for part two, it's all the same knowledge as part one. Quickly, get on. You just need to practice Viva. Viva practice over and over again until exhaustion. But my opinion on this is slightly different. I feel that you will naturally be able to deliver a succinct, confident answer if the knowledge is fully understood
That's
down to the very fundamental level. And again, this is why the videos, Dr. Goal, your videos are very useful for this because you do a lot of videos that are targeted between part one and part two. So, for example, you had some videos on renal physiology, some videos on calcium homeostasis in terms of kidney stones, in terms of even just this simple things from epidemiology. They cross over from part one to part two. If you go all the way back and learn things at a fundamental cellular level, yes, it's a painful process to go and learn
I know.
the cells and everything, but if you learn that down and keep that knowledge ready for part two, it then means when you're then starting to learn the Viva technique, so that's nearer the exam,
Right.
you're relying on knowledge that you've got very, very ingrained. So it means that you're not going to sit there in front of the examiner thinking about what do I want to say. You need to be able to immediately reply to
Right.
the
It has to be
examiner with a
spontaneous.
confident answer.
It has to be spontaneous. And what you
It
said
has to
is
be.
important that stronger your fundamentals are, more fluent your answers will be. Because the exam is all about that. If your basics are not clear, the examiners can never take you to the higher level of discussion.
Hmm.
So basics fundamentals must be clear. So if you are able to answer something which is of higher level of thinking, but you are not able to answer some fundamental basic answers, then it gives a very wrong impression to the examiner.
Hmm.
So what was your overall analysis of this exam session? Did you find that you have already had a perception about the exam? Did you find this is almost similar to your perception, or you find no, it's different?
So the thing that I will say is a lot different to the perception is the stress. It's a lot more stressful be on the day than you think, which is again why I think it's really important to have the science and the knowledge down because it's a very different performance on the day. No
Right.
matter how much you've practiced with your friends, to turn up on the day with a senior consultant in front of you with a mark sheet and another examiner with a mark sheet, no matter how good you are, you will be nervous. So, which is why you really have to rely on knowing your knowledge down. So that's one thing I thought everyone says, oh, don't worry, it's not too bad. It's like it becomes quite relaxed. I don't think it's truly that relaxed an environment. And I think you're slightly kidding yourself if you think that you can be very relaxed in an exam scenario to become a consultant. So I think you just have to try and embrace it and realize this is a stressful environment. I need to say what I want to say without stumbling over my words,
Yeah. Right.
get the marks out early, and then stop talking.
Right. So you have been emphasizing a lot on the knowledge. The stronger your knowledge is, the better your performance
Mm.
will be. You suggest candidates who are preparing, what should they use as a base for the knowledge? I know Oxford is said to be the best book, but then it has a very limited knowledge. It's not updated. It doesn't contain recommendations or the consensus statements, which is required sometimes. So, what do you recommend for the knowledge? Where do
So
somebody study from?
just as you say, a lot of the things I find the latest things you can get are from the EAU guidelines and the Pocket Handbook. Baus consensus documents are very good. And the main thing I want to emphasize is I think having your knowledge understood very well is better than, say, learning the subtle nuances of something very, very niche, which is unlikely to come up. So I would say the syllabus is probably the Oxford Handbook in terms of being able to pass. And I was amazed at how little evidence I needed to truly know in any true detail for the exam. And I performed as well as I did. I
Right.
think a huge importance is it is a viva. They're interviewing you as a colleague. They want to see if you are a safe consultant who's not going to make things up. They're
Right.
going to practice as they want to practice. And if you aren't sure of the answer, just say, you know what would I actually do in this scenario? Ignore the, oh, I'm remembering this paper from so and so in whatever year. Just think, what would I do and how would I do it? So say, like, yes, this someone needs to go to theatre. How would you go about doing that? Do
Right.
it, and then summarize what you've done.
So, Mustafa, I know whatever you are saying is definitely important, but one important trick you must have followed, something that makes you absolutely outstanding in this exam. So, what do you think? How were you different from the? See, I know so many candidates who have appeared.
Hmm.
Everybody says that I did well or I gave my best performance. What would you think? Like, what made your gold medal? Like, how did you achieve the gold medal?
So that's again that's a it's I wasn't really anticipating I was going to get it. I think just the important things that I would say are
I
probably
just want to do a
like I couldn't
retrospective.
compare myself to other
Just want to
people
do a
are
retrospective analysis.
yeah.
What do you think? What made you stand out? Like, what was the factor? Is it the confidence, or is it the knowledge, or is it a mixture of everything? What is it? What do you think?
I would say the key difference is when someone was presenting me with a question, just being able to confidently just give the answer. Don't mess around and say other things. I feel like me knowing my knowledge well, because compared to my colleagues, I focused a lot more on revising leading up to part two when everyone was talking about let's do Viva practice, let's do Viva practice. I was quite happy that I'm able to deliver an answer. I know everyone's kind of different in how they're able to respond to pressure and react to questions with critical thinking and being able to give a succinct answer. I was quite happy I'm not that bad at doing that. So I felt the priority would be to have very, very sound knowledge so that any question that's thrown at me, I'll
Right.
be able to answer it quickly, stick to time, because you want to try and get all the way to the end of the scenario to get the level 8 marks. If you're still stuck at the same question and you haven't finished it, you won't get level 8 marks.
Right. Absolutely. In how many stations you got the full marks?
I've managed to forget now. I think it was, where is it? I think it was about 3 stations I got full marks. So the ones that I got were BPH andrology, calculi, urinary tract disease, and pediatrics.
That's amazing. Did you face any stations that you were unprepared, or you find that okay, you were struggling a bit because it's quite different concept that they're asking? And how did you manage those steps?
So interestingly, in the BPH andrology, where I got full marks, I thought was probably the hardest station. My specific examiner for BPH was, you'll see this when you sit there on the day. Some examiners are very kind, some
Yeah.
of them are not. And this examiner was very harsh and would not let you progress. Basically, it felt like an incredibly uncomfortable scenario compared to other stations that you sit.
Okay.
And the key advice that everyone says is if they're pushing you, it's probably because they're trying to get you to an 8. It's not because they're trying to get you to pass or fail. You tend to know if you're not doing well in a station. But if
Right.
they're just trying to push you and provoke you, it's because they're trying to get you to an 8. They're trying to show how well do you respond to pressure? How well do you respond to being antagonized?
That's a very important point. I think sometimes when examiners are trying to push you, you start feeling lack of confidence. You start feeling probably it's a prompt. And we always have a mindset that a prompting will reduce our marks. So it should not always be felt that way. If you're not done well, you will always have the feeling and you'll always lose the confidence. But if you're doing well and the examiner is prompting in spite of that, it might be because he wants to give you an additional mark.
Yeah.
So, Mustafa, there are a lot of candidates who are appearing for this Section 2 in November. So, they have 3 months to prepare. How much time did you take for preparation, and how much time would you recommend somebody to prepare?
So in terms of when we found out our results, which took about 4 weeks from the part one, and I know this time round I've got a colleague who's just sat the part one and they've got from your part one. I think that's really important to just make sure that you don't lose any momentum. So keep the revision going as soon as you've gotten your results. But one key thing I want to say is do not revise in that gap between part one and knowing your results. You still have a life, you want to remain sane. And I think the whole importance is about revising smart rather than revising for a whole number of hours and then none of it goes in and you don't perform. And my other advice in terms of things that I probably did differently is the length of time you'll focus on revising your knowledge versus going into your Viva style preparation.
Right.
I think that there's no right or wrong. I think it'll do whatever suits you. If you feel that you are a confident individual, you're good at responding to pressure, you're good at thinking when someone asks you a question, then you could probably spend more time on the knowledge and making sure that's very, very sound, then do Viva nearer the time. But if you aren't, then obviously then it's surprising you don't need a huge amount of knowledge, but you'll just need to make sure that you get the Viva material down so that you can pass. Because if you trip over, no matter how smart you are, you will not pass the station. You need to be able to deliver your answer succinctly and confidently.
That's a very important message. You said about the Viva style preparation. So, you have a group to study with?
So yes, so we formed separate study groups and we had certain consultants where we work who would work with us in terms of doing Viva style practice with each other. The key thing is finding that balance. Don't just work by practicing with your friends,
Right.
because naturally your friends will be very supportive, very kind. They want you to say kind things back. You need to practice with consultants,
Yeah.
and ideally with consultants who know about the exam and how the exam style is, because the exam has obviously changed quite a lot over time.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily based around what would you do in your line of work where you work. You're working in this hospital that is utopia for the exam. You have every single examination test, everything right at your fingertips. So you need to be able to answer the question ready for the exam, not for real life. And those often are very different. Where I work in Wales, things are obviously very different. Things are quite backwards. We don't always do all of the same things that the guidelines recommend. We don't have the healthcare resources. So it's about remembering what would the exam answer be? What would be the perfect world answer, and answer it that way and practice with the consultant as if that is the case.
All right. It's very important. You have to adapt to the exam format. Every exam will have a different format. If you're appearing for FEBO, it's different. Your exam preparation would be different. FRCS demands different kind of preparation. Guidelines have to be from European guidelines. And what about NICE guidelines? Do you feel the NICE guidelines are not updated, or which sections do you think somebody has to read the NICE guidelines?
So yeah, so the NICE guidelines, you're right, they're often quite out of date, but in terms of base level practice, you have to know the simple ones. For the exam, for example, the NICE stone guidelines haven't changed in a very long time, but they're still very fundamental, and your classic stone practice will be based on this. And they're very easy to read compared to some of the EAU guidelines, which can be very, very lengthy. So there's plenty of information on bladder cancer and prostate cancer in terms of the NICE guidelines. So you must know those ones. But other guidelines, EAU, are more useful because there's more depth. But I remember from watching your videos as well, Ankit, and you're very right. This is a British exam. So you need to try and aim as much guidelines based on, for example, NICE guidelines, any Baus consensus documents, things like that. So aim with British evidence if you can. Because I know there's a lot of international candidates. So it is a British exam. Stick with British evidence if you can. Failing that, EAU is absolutely fine.
Right. One thing I would like to add here is the NICE guidelines are the minimum guidelines. I mean that something that has made into the NICE guidelines are the minimum amount of investigations or the minimum recommendation that has to be followed in the NHS. And
Yeah.
it's also cost effective. The most cost effective investigations have met to the NICE guidelines. In the
Mm,
EA, it's the gold standard. You won't find, irrespective of the cost, or even if you take up
mm,
NCC guidelines, irrespective of the cost, they have added the guidelines. For example, this last exam, there was a confusion about the PSMA PET scan.
mm,
He was asked, how would you stage the prostate cancer? And the discussion went there, and he said PSMA PET scan, but it's hardly being done in the UK. It's not there in the NICE guidelines because it's not cost effective. So it has not been able to make to the NICE guidelines. However, it's there in the EU guidelines, NCCN guidelines. So you have to trust the NICE guidelines where there is an issue of cost and there is a recommendation and there is both the guidelines are available. Try to think
mm.
NICE guidelines is something which is practiced in the UK. EU is the gold standard, and you have to
Yeah,
balance accordingly.
fully agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So Rashid, what else? You are
Mm.
66, you are into your trainee. Do you find you easy for trainee because your knowledge is much fresh and you are into do you find
Um, it's very difficult to say because I most of us who revise as a group, we were all ST6s, and we naturally we know that this is a stepping stone. You have to have passed it to go to your ST7 and CCT. You need to pass this. You don't want to be resitting and then it's going to potentially delay your CCT date. So I think the main difference if you're an ST6 sitting it is that there's a degree of pressure. It becomes quite desperate. You're really, really keen to pass this exam. So I think it drives you a bit more where it's not as simple as, oh, if I failed it, I'll just sit it again. You have a time frame. You're probably able to sit it once more before your CCT date, your certificate of completion of training, would be delayed if you haven't passed it on potentially the second attempt. So I think that's the main difference. Because anecdotally speaking to colleagues who aren't in training, the exam is just as hard no matter what you do. I don't think it makes you any better or any worse. I just think it's the pressure that you're under as a trainee to try and deliver, to try and
yeah.
make sure that your TPD is impressed with you. Yes, it's one of those things. You feel a bit more pressured.
So the take home message is anybody can do it. Anybody who has prepared for 3 to 4 months and has committed a lot, has studied in the waiver format, and has understood the NHS guidelines, what the NHS principles of work are, especially those who are not working in the NHS for them.
Mm,
It's important that you absorb the NHS working style and understand what is being practiced and then follow it as per the NHS guidelines, the NICE guidelines, and the European guidelines. Keep your knowledge, back your
mm,
evidence where it is relevant, be rational in your answering. And anybody who is doing all this and committing himself to the exam format is going to make successfully through the exam. That is what
mm.
can just send this message to everyone. And I know after listening to this recording, when I upload this video, many candidates are going to have questions for you, Mustafa. So we'll be very happy if you can I'll try to connect them to you.
Oh yeah, please, yeah.
So if you can guide them, since you have just passed your exam, we don't want this whole thing to go just like if you connect to you after 6 months, you'll probably forget a lot of things. So just because
No,
you're
absolutely. I'm more than happy to help. I think that's an important thing about this interview. And I wanted to thank you as well because your videos have been so helpful. The most important thing I want to say is that everyone's got a different revision style. I found YouTube videos very helpful because they're just easy to remember. You can always think back to them. And because the YouTube videos are well, it's like a presentation, and the Viva exam is a presentation. So when you're thinking about, same with podcasts, when you're thinking about how to deliver the answer, rather than reading it from a page, is remembering how it was delivered in a quick, easy to basically easy to say fashion is really important. The examiners can tell when you're tripping over your words and it looks clumsy and it just looks like you're losing your confidence. And then you will naturally lose your confidence on the day when you realize that you're not speaking confidently or succinctly and you're not getting your words out properly. So I think the YouTube videos are very helpful, Dr. Gold, and we really want to just thank you as a group. A bunch of us were using your videos. We as a group want to thank you for that.
great. Thank you so much for your kind words. And we all want to stay connected to you. And we are starting the courses again. Today, we are starting the section 1. Tomorrow, we are starting the section 2. And we'll be connecting to you, Dr. Rashid. And thank you for your kind words and all the suggestions that you have given. I think it's very important for whoever is planning to appear for the section 2. Will definitely find your words useful.
Brilliant. No problem at all. Lovely to speak to you.
Thank you. Nice meeting you. Thank you.
Take care.